Hi, I'm Casey, and I'm here today with the founder and lead principal architect of Sustainable.TO, Paul Dowsett. We found him on the internet to help design our home, and I'm here today to ask him about what his firm does for green building in Toronto. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Great, Casey. How are you today?
Good. So we're so glad that you came and designed our new house. You see it's here in the background. So can you tell us, what does your firm do?
My pleasure, Casey. Our firm works to design houses for people in the Toronto area, and we make everything as sustainable as possible.
So what does that mean, sustainable?
What we do is we try and be as energy efficient as possible and to make the home as healthy as possible. Those two things work very well together.
Oh, so what kind of strategies do you use to make a home energy efficient?
We start with conserving energy first. We have a three-step process, and the first step is to conserve as much energy as possible, to reduce the energy load on the house. So what we do is we make the building as airtight as possible, we insulate it as much as possible so that we can, once heat is produced in the house, we can keep it inside the house as long as possible, and then the opposite, in the summertime, we can keep the heat out of the house to reduce the cooling load. That's the first step, is to conserve energy. The second step is then to use renewable resources as much as possible, both passively and actively. The passive sense, like on your house here, is the solarium at the back that allows us to heat the interior of the home in the wintertime with the sun, and that is a passive strategy. There's also active strategies at work in this house, active energy, where we have solar panels on the roof that are considered, as I say, are considered active because they're a technology. So passive systems don't use technology, uses good planning, and active systems use technology. So we use as much passive and active renewable energy as possible to start. Once we've gone through step one and we've reduced the load, step two is to use renewable energy to the maximum extent possible. And then step three is then to use the minimal amount of fossil fuels that we need to bridge the gap between those two.
Wow. So how about building a healthy home? What are some things you do to build a healthy home?
We try and use materials which are non-toxic, and really what that means is using materials that are as close to their natural state as possible. So wood is very good, untreated wood is excellent. Also materials like Roxol insulation, which is simply rocks spun into wool to make the insulation. So we try not to use petroleum products, we try not to use toxic paints, things like that. We try and make everything as breathable as possible. Also, once we've made the house airtight, we have to ventilate it properly. And again, that's part of making the home healthy. And so we use a heat recovery ventilator to do that.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, is it more expensive to build a green home?
No, it should not be, because if you do good planning from the beginning, then you're offsetting a lot of costs through that good planning process. Also, when the house is completely airtight and well insulated, we can then reduce the size of the heating and cooling systems within the house. So the extra cost of the insulation up front is then offset by a reduced cost in the mechanical systems in the house. So no, it should not cost more.
Oh, so we should always get a good designer to design the house.
That's right. It all starts with good planning and an integrated design right from the beginning, where we have the architect working with the heating and ventilating and air conditioning contractor in the early days to make sure that all their systems are working in harmony.
Oh, so do you somehow calculate how well a house performs? How do I know and compare it to other people?
We do our first calculation in the office on a model of the house, on a computer model. And so we use a program called HERS, which is the Home Energy Rating System, HERS. So we use that program to model your house against a typical house. So a net zero energy house, and that would mean a house that produces as much energy as it consumes, is a rating of 0 on the scale, and a fairly standard house is a rating of 100. The house that we designed for you here, it came in on our modeling at about 42 or 43, so it is way below the average.
Wow, so it uses more than 50% less energy than a typical house?
That is correct.
Wow, that's amazing, Paul. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And anything below 45 on that scale is called net zero ready. So with enough solar panels and enough active energy systems on the house, you could make this house produce as much energy as it consumes.
Wow, that's amazing, Paul. Thanks so much for coming today and talking to me about designing energy efficient and green homes.
You're welcome, Casey. My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to ask you more questions later as the house is being built, okay?
Excellent. Happy to contribute.
Okay. If you like what Paul does, please visit his website at Sustainable.TO. See you later.